always have to make sure I see the clock ticking so that I know I'm recording.
Right.
Liz, thank you for joining me here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I would like to say that you were Kevin's husband, my previous guest. I mean, Kevin's wife.
Yes, he's my husband. Yes.
He's your husband. So I got both of you,
Yeah,
which I'm
two for
very
one
happy
special.
about. Two for one, that's right. First off, can you share with us the facts that you have brought with you about yourself?
Sure. So I am a mom. That's kind of the lion's share of my identity right now. So
Yeah,
I got to start with
absolutely.
that. You know, I have two kids. I have been diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety and depression. So I have several factors of neurodivergence working with me. And I am a native Texan, but I don't resonate with all of Texas. I feel like I need to say that.
Sure. There are different levels to claiming you're a native Texan.
Right. It's like, I don't come at me, don't judge me, you know?
Yeah. I have I've tried to tone down the rhetoric on that a little bit for myself because Nathaniel was born in Georgia.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
he's a Georgia peach. So I don't want it to like seem like the be all and end all
Right,
is to
is
be a
to be
native
from
Texan.
Texas, right?
And I don't want that to like lead to some sort of rift between he and his brother. But
Right.
I mean, it's there a little bit, the
Yeah.
native Texas thing. Yeah. Have you? What is your level of concern about maybe your kids having or being diagnosed with similar things?
So I will say, there are definitely genetic components to each of, the disorders. I can see it through my family lineage. I expect that it will go on to my children, at least in some capacity. I really think that there's no better time to be neurodivergent because it's
True.
the least stigmatized that it's ever been. In our household, we talk about neurodivergency, we talk about anxiety, we talk about depression. We talk about all of these things. We share how it manifests for the adults in our lives. We share the difficulties of it. We share the positives of it because I really am a firm believer that being neurodivergent is not always just a hindrance. I think that there are a lot of aspects to it depending on where you fall along whatever spectrum you're on, that it can be a superpower for some people in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just kids today having the vocabulary to talk. I mean, not just in a way that you and I are talking now.
Right.
Not in like any kind of overwrought or kind of freighted way to be able to just talk, have a normal conversation about this stuff and it not seem weird at all.
Right.
Is so impressive to me.
Right. My daughter, her good friend has autism, and she's open with it. She tells people, I have autism, so I may do this or I may say this, and it's very much an open conversation, and it's more presented just matter of factly than any type of stigma that I feel like I experienced growing up.
Yeah. And kids back, I don't want to say in your day because your day was a lot more recent than my day. But kids back in the olden times, we would like in school, they just get shoved in special ed
Absolutely.
and then they're stigmatized their whole time. And these
Yeah.
could be bright kids.
Absolutely. And even if they don't shine academically, it's like the comparison of the fish and, the ape. Like a fish being held as the same standards of an ape is never going to climb a tree in the same way that the ape is. The ape is never going to swim the way the fish does. So just because someone is different in a way, it doesn't mean that they don't have something of value to give to society, to give to themselves and their community.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too now is I feel like people are recognizing the value that everybody can have, and not just people that are neurotypical and fit the stereotype of what it means to be successful academically or non-academically.
Yeah. I remember hearing, this was several years ago on NPR, and I'm going to mangle this story to some extent, but back in the 30s or 40s, so they were interviewing this famous dancer, and she had been raised in the 30s or 40s, and I mean, ages before anything like this was normalized. And she was struggling in school, and her mom was concerned about her, but like really wanted to just figure out what was going on. And so she took her daughter to see a doctor, and they talked for a little bit in the office, all three of them. And then the doctor and the mom stepped out and told the little girl, "We'll be right back." And so they stepped out, and then the doctor said, "Let's just watch her." And so they watched through like the office door, and she stood up and was kind of like just moving around. And the doctor's like, "There's nothing wrong with your kid. She's just a dancer." And to me, that's very moving, even like if it happened today, but the fact that it happened so long ago, and that is exactly what she ended up being.
Yeah.
And the idea that we all come with our own strengths, and it's just, I feel like it used to take, like that little girl, whoever she was, I wish I could remember, her mom was her champion.
Right.
But now it feels like you can kind of be that kid without really even needing a champion anymore.
Yes. Yeah. All of the people who would have been lobotomized 50 years ago, we're all just out here and about now,
Yeah, that's right.
And it's okay.
Just bebopping around. Okay, Liz, we have come to the portion of the show where you choose your question. Are you ready to do so?
I think so.
Okay, please choose one, and then don't look at it. Let me read it to you.
Okay.
All right, there it is. Let's see what you got here. Oh, you got two.
Oh,
Do you want to pick one of the two?
I thought I felt that was a long one.
Okay. I should put one in there that's like very long and complicated. Okay, there are 53. You have chosen number 20.
Okay.
What do you think about the prospect of dying?
Whoa.
Just a little lighthearted conversation.
So, oh gosh, that's a tough one. I've discussed with you before, but I have a strong fascination with like true crime and morbid things. I listen to the Morbid podcast, every day. I'm not gonna lie. And obviously with that comes a lot of death.
Mm-hmm.
And in my personal life, I have not had much experience with death. Like the only people close to me that have passed were my grandma and my grandpa. So I've been really fortunate to not have to deal with extreme grief that often, I have had a lot of anxiety about death, but not my own death, because I feel like when I die, well, I'm dead, so I won't know, But I definitely have a lot of anxiety about like, if my husband dies, or if, my mom dies, because we're very close, and I'm like, it's going to shatter my world.
Mm-hmm.
And like, how am I going to make it through? And, I see like people in the news when they have something tragic happen, and there's an accident, and they lose someone so close to them. I really don't understand how they go on. And I don't understand how they can keep going every day and pick up the pieces and just like continue and rebuild their life. Like, I feel like if that were to happen to me, I don't know how I could do that,
Yeah.
I'd probably just feel like I'd have to be institutionalized, I don't fear death for myself. I don't it's not something, my own mortality is not something I think of that much,
Mm-hmm.
aside from like, just being honest, a couple of really deep depressive episodes, and like a little bit of suicidal ideation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't know. I think, what pulls me away from that is I have children,
Yeah.
and it's the most important thing to me to be there for them,
Yeah.
and I couldn't take their mom away from them,
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't know. I feel like with death, I have complicated feelings because my heart, I want to believe that there's something after life. I want to believe that I will see my grandma again.
Yeah.
I really want to believe that, when it's my time, they say sometimes, with people in hospice that they see loved ones coming to them. And I want that to be true
Yeah.
so badly. So there is part of me that just allows myself to think that, But after my grandma passed away, I kept wishing that she would come to me in some way, like wishing for a sign, wishing for her to come to me in a dream, or it just let a butterfly land on me or something, I
Right.
just wanted that connection with her so bad still. And even still, I'll talk to her, like she's here. I'll just speak out to her. Um, and whether my brain really believes that that is a connection that's possible, I can't say.
Mm-hmm.
My logical brain says, no, that's, it doesn't work like that. When you're gone, you're gone. But the emotional part of me can't accept that.
Right.
And so I have to have some way to cling to her, and I say her because she's the closest person to me that's passed.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I would feel that way too, were my mom to pass, or my husband, or, anybody else that I'm really close to. So I want to believe that there's more out there and that we can still have those connections. I don't know if we really can or if it's possible, but I let myself believe that.
Yeah. How old were you when your last family member died? How long ago was that?
It was only 2 years ago. My grandmother passed right almost a week before my son was born,
Uh-huh.
and it it deeply hurt me
Yeah.
because one, she couldn't meet him,
Yeah.
and she would have loved him.
Yeah.
She was a grandma through and through, and it also really hurt me because I wasn't able to go to her funeral because I had just had a C-section and I couldn't travel, and it was 6 hours away.
Yeah.
So my mother-in-law actually told me, though, she said grandma would have known what's going on, and she would know why you wouldn't be there. It's not like she would have her feelings hurt that you didn't
Right.
come. She said funerals are for the living, and that stuck with me, and it gave me so much comfort to think that way. And I still had my mom was able to travel to the funeral, so I still had her take a bouquet of my grandma's favorite flowers, which were stargazer lilies. And I asked her, I was like, can you please just put them inside her casket with her so that I can feel like I was with her,
Yeah.
And she did that for me, and I really appreciated that. And I do know that, you know, grandma would have known why I couldn't be there, and that if I could have, under any circumstances, I would have otherwise. But that was hard. My grandma, we were super close. We talked multiple times a week on the phone for an hour plus, and we just had an amazing relationship because she helped raise me.
Mm-hmm.
And so to lose her and then not be able to go, say a final goodbye, and for her not to be able to meet my son, it was hard.
Yeah. Do you think that the closest that you felt with your grandmother, that your kids will also be able to experience the same sort of closeness with their grandparents?
That's a good question. I do think so. I do think so in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Our kids are fortunate to have two sets of grandparents, or well, a grandma and grandpa, and then a grandma. And but they're also fortunate that they have both myself and their dad together in their lives. And so I think that there is a level of closeness that comes with a grandparent and grandchild relationship where the grandparent is like a a paternal or maternal figure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know that they will ever experience that extreme closeness, but maybe that's for the best.
Right.
Maybe that's a relationship that they don't need to go to that level, because hopefully they have that with both their dad and
Yes.
myself.
I think that's a mark in the favor of you and Kevin, the
Yeah.
job you're doing. And
Yeah.
yeah. My grandparents, my mom's parents, were very much, I don't want to make it sound like I grew up in a war zone or whatever, but they were very much a protective factor
Mm-hmm.
in my upbringing. Just lovely people, and we were very close to them. But part of that is because it was hard to be the son of my dad.
Mm-hmm.
To have them there to kind of fill that gap was so important to me, and has proven to be so important to me over the course of my life. But like you said, my kids won't have that same gap to fill. Now they have good relationships with their grandparents, and as I mentioned, Nathaniel was born in Georgia, and one of the reasons we came back is because both his mom and I had close relationships with our grandparents, and we wanted our kid or kids to experience the same.
Yeah.
And the grandparents are nearby, and so they've gotten to experience that. But I don't know, I think it's probably better that they can just enjoy being grandparents and grandkids.
Yeah, it's got to be less pressure,
Yeah.
when as a grandparent that your kids have it under control, and that they're parenting your grandkids in a way that you're satisfied with,
Mm-hmm.
and rather than having to walk that line of, well, I'm grandparent, but I'm also kind of like assistant parent. They always say grandparents have the best job, right? Because they've already done the hard work of raising the kids and they get to enjoy the grandkids, right?
Right.
But if you are a grandparent placed in that parental role, it probably is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. There's more of an obligation rather
Yes.
than just
Just getting to be a fun
experiencing
grandparent,
the joy
right?
of
Yeah.
the grandkid. Yeah, exactly. My mom has said before how much she feels like my grandparents would have loved my boys.
Yeah.
And when I think of that, it's one of those thoughts that I can't entertain too long, or else I'm
Oh,
going to start crying.
yes. Yes.
Because it's spot on. And when their mom was pregnant with our first, one of the things that I don't remember where I read this or heard it, but I think I read it somewhere. The idea was that when your child is born, in some small way, everyone who has in your family who has died is resurrected a little bit
Yes.
in them.
Yes. You can see like the legacy pass through to them in some way. Yeah. It's a beautiful thought. It's a comforting
so touching.
thought.
Yeah, it's a comforting thought. And in that way, if that keeps happening generation after generation, and we're all here because none of our generations ended.
Yeah.
They kept having kids.
Yeah.
And so in a way, there is kind of this element of immortality that goes beyond death, that
That's
goes
true.
beyond dying. If
Yeah.
some part of you just keeps being renewed.
Right.
in the
And I feel like,
generations.
within your culture, the traditions that you pass down, the values that you pass down, as you either pass them down from previous generations or create new ones of your own, that is an aspect of immortality. You're doing something that your ancestors did at one point, or you have the same values that certain family members did, and there is a lot of comfort in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love seeing little parts of my kids that I can't easily assign to either me or their mom.
Yeah.
And I always think that's been dormant. That little gene has been dormant for
Right.
ages, and suddenly
Right.
it's popped up again, and
Yes.
here it is now. And
I love that too. And I love even more though the traits that I can attribute to my grandma or my grandpa,
yeah,
even if it's something so silly that's definitely not just a trait of theirs, but like my daughter loves ice cream and my grandpa used to have a bowl, like a bowl of ice cream. The man was having 4 or 5 servings at once,
yeah,
but every single night he had to have his bowl of ice cream and he would share with the cat. And my daughter is the same way. She loves her ice cream and she will share with the cat. And it's just so sweet to think that, like, you know, my grandfather was an immigrant from Sweden. He came over on the boat with his family from Sweden. And, he had no idea that his lifelong trajectory, would go the way that it did. And then I'd end up seeing this funny little similarity in
yeah.
his great granddaughter,
Yeah. My grandfather did the exact same thing. He would get, I mean, at some point, it's pointless to even scoop it out of the carton
Yes.
because you're just eating
Yeah.
a carton-sized serving of ice cream.
Yeah.
He was the exact same way, and he had this huge spoon he would use, and they always had more than one half-gallon of ice cream in their freezer, and we were never denied access to it.
Oh, yeah.
And now you have your ice cream truck.
I know. Grandpa would really love that.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, he would be in there with me.
Not to get dark, but how do you manage when your mind wanders to the idea of one of your kids dying?
I really don't let myself go there.
Yeah.
I struggle. So when I had my first child, my daughter, it was an emergency C-section. I had preeclampsia. It was super difficult. She was in the NICU for a month before she got to come home. And she came home on a heart and lung monitor. And when you have to bring your child home on a monitor, it is terrifying. And I felt like I could not be away from her at all because what if the monitor goes off? What if something's going on? And I was terrified of SIDS.
Same.
I was Googling, how long to be afraid of SIDS? What age does the risk of SIDS decrease? What I was doing everything I could because I did have just this crazy anxiety about SIDS. And when I had my son, luckily, I'd already been through having a baby once, and so I wasn't as scared of that the second time around. But yeah, I that's one of those things where if I started thinking about my children going, I don't know how I could come back from that. It's like I didn't even mention them in the first part talking about if my mom went or my husband went because I can't even let my brain go there.
Yeah.
I mean those kids are my world.
Yeah.
And I do everything to protect them and keep them safe. And I think if my brain were to go there, I'd have a hard time coming back, and realistically not letting that become a recurring fear that just really impacted me in my life,
That's been my approach too. There'll be plenty of other thoughts that I have where I just like, all right, brain, just take me wherever you want, and I get bogged down or whatever. But when that pops up, as it sometimes does, I shut the door as quickly as I can.
Yes.
You just stay in there.
Yep.
You're fine in there. Things are good out here. My kids are safe and happy, and there's no reason to entertain thoughts of that. But just the specter of that. Every now and then it'll kind of poke its head out and be like, you sure you don't want to think about this for a little while?
I think that's more common than we think. I think that is probably almost every parent's deepest fear is losing a child, and it's something that we don't want to think about, we don't want to talk about. And when you see it in the media, you know, it's something that, like recently when the floods happened, you
Oh
know,
my God. Yes.
I honestly, I just couldn't, I couldn't read about it. I couldn't listen to the news about it. I could not absorb any media related to it because my daughter is of that age, you know, and it's so close to home. And even if it wasn't, even if it was halfway across the world, you know, um, it's something that I just cannot fathom happening. And as a parent, I don't know how you come back from it.
Agreed. For all of our millions of viewers, this was a summer flood that happened not far from here, and there was some girl. Was it a Girl Scout?
It was like girls camping.
Girl Scout. There were girls camping,
Yeah.
and the river flooded so quickly that they couldn't even escape.
Yeah, they weren't all notified in time, and you know, and then the terrible thing too is so many parents had to wait so long
Yeah.
to get closure, to know where is my daughter, where is my child,
Oh
you
my
know.
gosh. Yeah.
And I just cannot fathom the agony of that, you know.
That's why I think, well, being a parent, every day you wake up as a parent, it's a leap of faith in some way. And, you know, these thoughts will pop up in my head, like dropping my kid off at school. And occasionally I'm like, you know, there have been parents who have done this very thing and never seen their kids again.
Yeah.
And the thought of that can be haunting if you allow it to be so. But I tend to prefer to just face things head on and not pretend like things aren't happening. Let's just be real about stuff. But when it comes to that kind of thing, I don't think that there's any benefit to wallowing in that kind of worry.
Yes, I agree. You know, I can easily be overwhelmed with the thoughts of my daughter going to school every day, and you know, even being a former teacher, undergoing drills it's really scary, you know, and a lot of the kids, they don't know, you know, the seriousness behind that, which I'm kind of glad that they don't.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, you really wish that they could understand, like, if a situation really happened, please, like, take this seriously. You know, please take care of your life and everyone else's lives, you know. And there have been many times as a parent that I'm like, should I just homeschool? You know, would that be better? But you know, I think there are a lot of benefits to having your child in public school, and I don't want to be so overly cautious that I deny them any of those benefits,
Right.
based on my fear of what could happen, you know. But it's definitely something that I think the majority of parents in America do think about.
Yeah.
You know.
Both of my kids are they're funny people, and they, you know, there's a darkness to some of their humor sometimes,
Sure.
and which I very much have and appreciate and love about them. But I've also, you know, they've joked about this sort of thing before, and I'm like, okay, that's what you just said is objectively funny, but let's not lose sight of the fact that this is a real thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to joke, but at some point you also need to acknowledge that this is a thing, like you said, like, pay attention to what is being told to you.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, we don't have to talk about that anymore.
Okay.
That was about as much as I feel like it deserves, like about
Yeah.
5 minutes, and then you just kind of move on from there. I've never experienced any sort of death in family or friends that wasn't age appropriate, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
People have died in order.
Yeah.
My aunt she's maybe 90 now. My mom, stepdad, they're in their 80s. So we're getting to kind of like this next phase where that's going to start being a real thing. And then it'll be me.
I know. How do you think you will feel when you're like the true patriarch of your family, of your line?
Well, I think in many ways I was destined to assume the role of patriarch, if only in my own mind. Um, I'm going to take. I want to really answer your question, but it's going to go in a direction that is maybe not kind of what we've talked about. I was raised thinking that, like, the hope of heaven was meant to be a comforting thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I can kind of see that. But what I found is that it was talked about so much that it actually scared me.
Me too. I was terrified as a kid
Mm-hmm.
of not getting into heaven.
Yes,
It,
exactly.
I was so worried that, and our pastor, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and our pastor was very much of the mindset of like, the stronger your faith, the more it'll be tested. And so that also scared me because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm supposed to believe in God, but the more I believe in Him, the more I'm going to be tested. And what if I fail and go to hell? I remember asking my grandma, like, what age is it that like I'm
Like your age
safe
of
up until,
accountability.
yeah, like
Yeah.
when do I become like accountable, not that I was out there doing anything weird,
Exactly, the
but I
sins
was
of an
just,
8-year-old.
I know, right, yeah, but I was just so worried about my soul. So I
Yeah.
get that. I shared that
Mm-hmm.
heaven was ended up being like a really daunting, scary thing.
Yeah. And I think too, like, even stuff like, um, I think the reason I had so many nightmares as a kid was because it was so vividly presented to me that just on the other side of the veil, there are all these scary things fighting for my soul.
Yeah,
The thought gets put in your head,
it
and
does.
there's no comfort to it to a little kid. It's just scary.
Yeah.
And I think I could count on one hand the number of times that my boys combined have woken up and complained of a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I think that that's because they do not have that frame of reference of there being like, there really are scary things after your soul. But don't worry, because here's the solution.
Yeah.
But that solution might be inaccessible to you unless you behave in a certain way.
Right.
So as a kid, I was terrified of dying. And I was terrified of anyone I knew dying because there's always that extra layer of
Are they going to go to heaven?
where do they go?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and my grandma would tell me, oh, well, so and so passed, but he wasn't a believer, so
Mm-hmm.
we. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's burning in hell.
Yeah.
That's a terrible thought to have as a kid, of for anyone, but especially of like a family member
Mm-hmm.
or a family friend or something. And my dad was not a Christian, and I remember for the longest when I was young and I had a relationship with him, being so afraid for his soul and
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna go to heaven, but my dad won't be there. And now I'm like, well. I'm not going wherever he's going anyway. But
Exactly. As I've gotten older and kind of taken those layers off of myself, I don't want to die anytime soon, but the thought of dying to me does not seem all that daunting, really.
yeah,
Like, I feel like, I mean, it's a natural part of life. And I feel like if you've kind of lived your life in a way that focuses on trying to maximize fulfillment and contentment, joy, and all the good things, then it gets less and less scary
yeah,
the older you get.
yeah,
I don't want my kids to have to experience me dying while they're still kids.
yeah,
I do allow myself to kind of worry about that sometimes, just wanting to live longer so that they have more years with a dad.
yeah.
But the prospect to me isn't, it's kind of like what you said. It's not something that really keeps me up at night. And I
Yeah.
feel like I'll be able to face it fairly honorably when it comes. And
Yeah.
any other final words on the prospect of dying, Liz, or is that?
We all got to do it.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Liz, we are back for the third and final portion of the show. Have you brought something in to inspire us or that you could recommend? Or
I have. Um, it might be a little cliche, but I think that it's really important. And this is a quote from Maya Angelou.
Okay.
And I might not say it exactly, right, but the essence of it is people will forget what you say to them. They will forget things that you do, but people will always remember how you make them feel. And I think that that is a universal truth because no matter, you know, what stage of life you're in, whether you're a child, you're a toddler, you're a, midlife, you're elderly, what you think about when you think about a person is how they made you feel. A child, my son's going to forget that I let him eat peanut butter out of the jar today, but he's going to remember, man, mom was there and she was there for me. She was comforting to me.
Yeah.
My daughter is going to forget, certain pieces of advice that I gave her, but she's going to remember the meaning behind it, the message behind it, even now, me trying to recite the quote, I may not say it exactly how it's written, but you're getting the feeling of it, And even if you think about people from the past, it might be somebody who was a good childhood friend of yours, or maybe the opposite, maybe a bully or a teacher, you're not going to remember all the specific times that you had with people from your past, but you're going to remember the feeling that they leave you with.
Yeah.
And so I think it's super important for us as humans to keep that in mind as we're interacting with each other, that we're treating each other with compassion and with empathy, and we're respecting each other, even through our differences and even through the really divisive and hostile time that we're living in. People will carry the memory of you. And I think it's really important to be mindful of what you want that memory to look like.